Aloha, this is Kurt Nielsen with eMortgage Hawaii, and this is your mortgage market update for the Hawaiian Islands for September 9th. So today I'd like to just give you an update on where rates are. They have continued to hold for the past couple of months, but really want to talk about where I think rates are heading. I do think we're in for lower rates. I want to talk to you about why that is, and that's information I really think that you need to share with your clients. I also want to end the presentation by talking about condominiums and what you really need to know about condos, condo documents, the R105C, budgets and reserve studies. And finally, there are some contract issues that really do hold things up, and I think it's important to go over some of the things that can make your escrows go smoother. So let's just start off with rates. As you can see, rates are very good right now. The 30-year fix is at 4.0% with only a half a point. So, you know, this is the lowest we've seen in about, I don't know, 15, 16 months. And I personally believe that while we may see some bumping up and down, I think the general trend through the fourth quarter will be for lower rates if my forecasts are right. Another thing you should notice is that the jumbo rates are almost the same as conforming rates. So up to $4 million, you can get a jumbo rate at 4 1/8, 4 1/4 with very little in points. So again, if you're in that market where you're selling property, where the clients are buying using a portfolio jumbo product, again, you got to point out that they're paying about the same rate as you would if you were on a conforming loan. So that's a lot of good information that is important for your buyers to know. And with real estate prices going up and interest rates going down, certainly this is the time to jump in if if they're really serious about owning property here in Hawaii. We all know that sooner or later the dam's going to break and rates are going to go back up, especially with the Fed getting out of quantitative easing. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So here are the trends of the mortgage-backed securities for the last 6 months. And as you can see, and remember that as the price goes up, rate goes down. It's an inverse relationship. So, boy, for all the way going back to June, we've just been bouncing up and down, kind of staying in that same zone of about a 4% interest rate. But lately there's been this little trend, and I think this little trend, it started back in August, and I believe that on the whole that these rates are going to continue to decline. And I think in the fourth quarter we could see a 30-year fixed rate at as low as 3.75%. Now, normally you would think that since the federal government has announced they're getting out of quantitative easing in October, you would think that, well, heck, if they were buying $85 billion a month of mortgages and now they're not buying any, interest rates would go up. But their purchases are being replaced by foreign investment. And we're going to talk about what's happening there, why it's happening, and why it should probably continue for at least the next 3 or 4 months. Now, what's unusual is the stock market has also been going up at the same time. That's usually not typical. Usually the bond market goes the reverse direction of the stock market. So as stocks go up, interest rates should be going up. But again, because of foreign investment, we're seeing both the stock market going up and the mortgage-backed securities market or the bond market going up. I don't expect that to continue for too much longer. Again, I think it's possible that U.S. stocks are really overbought, and there may be a correction. Not to say that the economy is real weak or anything, but there is certainly a big run-up in the stock market without any corrections, almost for going on now 3 years. Another important news we just got, and I don't know if this is a blip or not, but in August we created fewer jobs in the United States than we had going back, all the way back to December. So we only created 142,000 jobs. It was really poor. The only good news in that number is they were typically higher skilled jobs of college graduates. So, so employers are spending more per employee, but they created fewer jobs. Now, I'm hoping that this was a blip. I do think it is, and sometimes these numbers get revised, but it's going to be real important to watch these job numbers. And another interesting number was the unemployment rate. It came down to 6.1%. Now, you would think that's good news, But when you peel that onion, you find out the only reason that unemployment went down is because a lot of workers left the workforce. So that's not good. So that number is disguised. Again, the number would have been higher had people stayed in the workforce. But again, there were more jobs for college graduates. So in last year and part of this year, a lot of the new jobs are being created in the low end, and now we're seeing the jobs being created more in the higher end and the higher paying jobs. Now the question is, why do we think that interest rates will continue to decline? It's not going to be dramatic, but I do think they will, decline. And you would think that with the end of quantitative easing, you would not get lower rates, you get higher rates. But here's what's happening. With the government getting out of quantitative easing, the dollar is going to get stronger and against currencies like the euro. So let's pretend that you're an investor in Europe and you want to look at your options. You could go buy the German Bund. So let's say you invested 100,000 euros. It's right. Today's yield is right around 1%. So a year later, you've only made 1,000 euros, or now you've got 101,000 euros. Now compare that to the United States. When you come investing in the United States, you got to convert those euros to U.S. dollars. So you're going to convert 100,000 euros to 132,000 U.S. dollars. And then you can buy a U.S. Treasury note, let's say a 10-year note that is generating a return of, let's say, 2.4%. A year later, you have 135,000 $135,000, but you got to take into account the trend on the U.S. dollar. We're expecting to see the U.S. dollar continue to strengthen. Europe is trying to weaken the euro, and if that works, we might see some exchange rate around 1.2 euros per dollar. So once that investor liquidates and converts his money back to euros, he'd have 113,000 euros. Now that's a 13% annual yield. So he's getting a higher yield on the U.S. Treasury note and getting the benefit of a strengthening dollar. So a lot of investors are moving money into the United States expecting the dollar to continue to gain on the euro, and it has. It's been consistently gaining. So that's why there's so much money coming into the United States, driving up the S&P 500 and driving up the bond market. And in essence, it's lowering our rates. Now, this isn't going to continue forever, but for now, I think that this is what's going to drive our mortgage rates over at least the next 3 or 4 months, and maybe even into 2015. But as the euro and the dollars begin to settle out, I would expect that floodgate to open back up, and we see rising mortgage rates going into 2015. Okay, some other news. Housing still remains pretty strong. There were a lot of naysayers, economists saying that the housing is going to burst and we're going to see another bubble, but it's just not happening. New home sales, they're not fantastic, but 412,000 units sold last month. The Case-Shiller Index, now what that is a 20-city index of housing prices across the United States. And year over year, we're up 8.1%. So that's a good, strong number. The FHA Housing Price Index up 0.4% for August. Again, a pretty strong number. It's about in line what we had forecasted of 5% per year. Now, pending home sales were up 3.3%, and that's a big jump. Year to date, we are only down 2.1% over last year. Last year was a big year. But when we started the year, we had a very cold winter on the East Coast. In January, February, and March, we were behind last year by 20-some%. So to go from 20% to only being down 2.1%, and we're probably going to even catch up further. So our home sales should probably meet or beat 2013. So that's a huge catch-up. That's good news. Here in the Hawaiian Islands, the numbers are a little disguised here. Kauai, the median home price year to date is up 1.68%. I think that number is wrong. We're checking into that. It should be closer to 7 or 8% according to my figures, but using Kauai Board of Realtors numbers, I think that number is inaccurate, and it's probably a little bit higher. Condo prices up 11.3%. Oahu, we're up 4.39%. Condos up 5.8%. Maui, the average home is up 7%. This is where I think Kauai should be, and condos up about 12%. And on the Big Island, we're only up 4.36%, with condo prices up 13.9%. But if you look at segments of the market, I'll just give you an example, like West Hawaii, the median home price is up 15% year over year. So in the areas where there's a lot of investment coming in from Canada or the mainland for second homes, vacation homes, those areas are doing quite a bit better. So if you look in Kauai, those areas that really do attract vacation purchases, same thing on Maui, those areas are up a lot higher than where the local Hawaiians will live. So so there are some really bright spots in all of the islands, depending on where you're located. So again, housing does remain strong, and it's again, I think it's going to remain that way. I don't see any big decline because I do see demand pretty strong right now. Here's another interesting little chart that I got from Title Guarantee. You've got to give them credit for this. They're tracking where foreign investors are coming from, and as probably we all realize, Canada leads the charge. And this is statewide, and I think it works out pretty much on every island. As the largest foreign buyers coming out of Canada, and then Japan is second. And then the rest of the countries. I think China is quite a bit more than this. It gets disguised because they form LLCs, and if you form a Hawaiian LLC and you buy a piece of property, it looks like a Hawaii buyer, but it really isn't. So some of these numbers are going to be a little bit skewed because of that activity. But this shows you that if you do cater to the Canadians or Japanese, that you should see some additional business coming out of those countries. So the direction of the mortgage rates, quantitative easing ends in October. So we were at the government was buying $85 billion a month of mortgages. They're down to $10 billion this month, and they're going to be to zero next month. But all that's getting replaced by foreign investment, which is amazing. I mean, that's just totally amazing. Had the dollar not been strengthening, we would have seen really a rise in mortgage rates. Again, unemployment's down, but again, that's not really what's happening. People are just leaving the workforce. Job growth is very poor last month, but I believe it's probably going to be a blip, and I don't think that we should get back to 200,000+ new jobs created every month. Housing is strong, especially in certain parts of Hawaii. Again, if you're catering to the resort market, second home, vacation market, that's especially strong, double-digit growth in many of those areas. And the other question is, are we going to see a stock market correction? I don't know, but again, if you believe the stock market's a bit oversold, you might see, a cooling down in the stock market as we head into the end of the year. Again, I do believe that there's going to be a strong dollar ahead. That's going to be good for mortgage rates. So I think the message to clients, home prices are rising, faster in some areas than others, but there's a window of opportunity now with low rates, so waiting is just going to cost you money because, this time next year, I think we all know that mortgage rates will be higher. Okay, there's a couple other things that I wanted to talk about. One is contract issues, and then we're going to talk a little bit about condos. Now, with a lot of contracts that I'm seeing, the real estate agents are asking for a conditional loan approval in 2 weeks. But they're also tying the appraisal to that they won't accept a conditional loan approval unless the appraisal is also in. But the lending process doesn't work that way. When we submit a loan, it takes us a week or two to work with a client to put all the loan documents together. Then we submit. We can get loan approvals usually in 1 to 2 days. But the appraisal process is completely separated by the appraisal management companies. They've got to get the order. They send out a request to appraisers. Appraiser raises their hand. They go out and do the appraisal. They send the appraisal back to the appraisal management company. They have to review it and approve it. Then it's got to go back to the bank. They have to review it and approve it, and then we get it. That's an additional at least 2 weeks. So if it takes us a week or two to get the loan submitted, don't expect that appraisal back for up to 30 days from the start of escrow. So just something important to, set in your contracts. Don't set false expectations. We're not going to get the appraisal done 15 days from the start of escrow unless the client has already dumped every single document we need on our lap on day one, okay? Also, condo documents. We really need those as soon as possible. Generally, I like to see those in the first 5 days because the condo documents will dictate what lender we can use. If there's an issue with reserves or the budget or the RR105C, we got to know that up front. I can't get those, if we get those condo documents 2 or 3 weeks into the process and we've already submitted a loan to a lender and find out that lender is not going to take this condo, we got to start all over. So it's important to get condo docs early. And if you're a listing agent, just tell the seller we might as well get them and pull them down and have them available right out of the gate. The other issue, furniture inventory. Just keep these out of the contracts if possible. Lenders are now requiring furniture appraisals if you have a big list of furniture included in the contract. They are not accepting zero value addendums much anymore. So that's kind of the past, and we're seeing now real problems with furniture inventory. Also, if you check in one discussing the need for rental documents, that will force the loan to be an investment property loan. Everybody knows those are more expensive and have a higher rate, so you just force your buyer into, a higher rate loan. So again, I think that should be left out of the contract. All inspections, termite reporting, staking, other inspections, get those done at least 3 weeks before closing. I had a realtor tell me that termite reports only last 10 days or something like that. That's not the case. We can use termite reports up to 90 days. So again, get those done early because we need those to get final loan approval and to get documents. If you give those to us 10 days before closing, we're not closing on time, okay? Another one is just properly number the addendums. We can't go from addendum 1 to addendum 3 to addendum 5 and skip addendum 2 because the lender's going to want addendum 2. And then we're just going back to you having people sign addendums that there was no addendum. So keep those numbered properly. On the address, make sure that the contract address is the same as what's on the prelim, which is the same as what's on the county records. They all have to be cohesive and the same. The other thing that you should know is if there are buyers' names on the contract, those people have to be on the loan. So it's important that you ask your clients who's going to be on the loan. Those are the people that have to be on the contract. If you put somebody on the contract that's not going to be on the loan, we got to go back and get an addendum to remove them. So it's important that you know that. And remember, a home inspection report does not go to the appraiser. It only goes to the buyer. If you give an inspection to an appraiser, they're going to make the appraisal very difficult. Inspectors are trying to find every little thing, and it really gets out of hand when you give those to the appraiser. So never give an inspection report to the appraiser. It is only owned by the buyer anyway, and shouldn't and really can't go to an appraiser or a lender without the written consent of the inspector and the buyer. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about are condominiums. Now, as most of you know, there's warrantable condominiums and non-warrantable condominiums. Warrantable condominiums, those loans can be sold to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and they have to follow their guidelines. So you can't have any current litigation. You can't have any condo hotel services like a rental desk, concierge, maid service, and there is limit on commercial space. You have to have adequate reserves. Look at the budget. 10% of the budget has to go to reserves, or you're not going to get that loan through a conforming lender. It'll have to go non-warrantable to a portfolio lender. So make sure you include that reserve analysis in the documents that we get along with the budget. Occupancy is the biggest issue. Most lenders require at least a 50% occupancy. That's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac guideline. And other lenders have overlays up to 70%. Now, what constitutes an owner-occupied unit? That is an owner who either uses it as a primary residence or a second home. If it's a second home, if they use the unit at least 2 weeks a year, that is an owner-occupied unit. The problem is that many HOA management companies don't track occupancy, and they can render the whole condominium complex non-lendable if they don't keep track of this. So we have to encourage HOA management companies to keep track of it, or at least give us an estimate. And I think if you look at most condominium complexes, if you count the owners that use their unit at least 2 weeks a year, you know darn well that most units are used by them or their family and would be considered a second home. So generally, I don't see occupancies under 70% if we get an accurate count. So that's hugely important. Finally, if the project is phased, the subject phase that you're selling in must be 70% pre-sold, or we can't do a conforming warrantable loan. The delinquency rate on HOA dues must be below 15%, and no single entity can own more than 10% of the units in the phase. So if it doesn't meet these requirements, then it's a non-warrantable condo. So non-warrantable condo is condotels, some other conditions that don't get met under the warrantable condos, and you're going to have limited lender participation, mainly local lenders, and lower loan-to-values and higher rates. So, but even on non-warrantable, we can't have litigation, no timeshare, and no forced rental pools. Okay, and the last thing I wanted to mention to you is that I've given presentations on this system that we're marketing before, but we have a fully automated listing marketing system. We will prepare a dedicated property website for each of your listings. We'll create a high-definition virtual tour from your photos. We'll provide you text sign writers that give a passerby a full mobile tour on their phone, plus all the sales information, you know, square footage, sales price, and you instantly get their phone number. So while they're still sitting outside your property, you can be on the phone with them setting up an appointment. It also has a lot of other features like fully integrated social media apps. We boost your listing to over 70 real estate websites that you choose. And when you go onto Truly and Zillow, all you have to do is hang the sign. If you want, post it on Craigslist, a couple of minutes per listing, and you're ready to go. That's all you need to do. And you get all of this for $12 per year for unlimited listings. So that's it. If you have any interest in our listing marketing system, you can call me at 334-6201, 334-6201, and have a good week.